I'm going to be talking about the post office case again. I thought I'd finished with it. I don't think this story will ever finish. Well, not for a very long time. But one of the best things about my channel is the quality of the subscribers I have. And on this occasion, a legal eagle of some sort, whom I shall call Emma, has sent me some clarifying information about Stephen Bradshaw. And I thought you might be interested. It might be a little bit dry, and I'm not sure, it might be a little bit long. You make up your own minds. I'm just giving this to you because I find it very interesting. I'm Grannyopteryx. All right, so Emma wrote to me and she started her letter thus. I'm not sure if you're aware of a few more things that make this picture even worse. That is, the picture I painted of what had happened in the post office scandal. If you're new to this story, what happened was a new computer program was foisted on all the postmasters in the country. It had been developed by Fujitsu, and it turns out it was full of all sorts of holes, backdoors, problems, inconsistencies, and glitches. And as a result, a lot of postmasters and postmistresses were convicted of having stolen money from the post office funds. False accounting on the part of the program. The problem is not that the program was false, but that everybody involved in its institution insisted it was perfectly fine. Fujitsu insisted it was fine. The government insisted it was fine. The post office insisted it was fine. The post office investigators, of which Stephen Bradshaw was one, insisted it was fine. And even the news media weren't that interested in the story of respectable people being arrested and charged and forced to pay or imprisoned for not paying huge sums of money. Now, I knew about this a couple of years ago, and apparently Private Eye, the satirical magazine, knew about this 10 years ago. But nobody seemed interested until fairly recently when a TV series was made about it. And that has caused a national intake of breath and a huge outpouring of outrage. So now we can really talk about it. Let's see what I made that video, and then I got this response from Emma. I'm not sure if you're aware of a few more things that make the picture even worse. The investigators got bonuses of 40% from each amount that was taken from the postmasters. I looked that up. I didn't see 40%, but I did see a bonus. If it was 40% of 30,000, some of the postmasters were accused of stealing 30,000. In one case, it was 74,000. Yeah, but 40% of 30,000 is £12,000. Now, that's not a sum to be sneezed at. And if you're an unscrupulous person, it's a very strong inducement to pursue a criminal action that you might have your doubts about. There's nothing like £12,000 to soothe the doubts, is there? In his evidence, Mr. Bradshaw calls these interviews, the interviews he conducted with the accused postmasters, he calls them PACE interviews. And this is what Emma was most outraged about. So I'll tell you what a PACE interview is for a start. The acronym PACE is short for the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. And this dates to 1984, when the West Midlands Serious Crime Squad was discovered to have been forcing confessions from people, innocent people, in order to up detection figures. And it's because of that a particular way of conducting interviews with accused people had to be formulated. And Emma continues, PACE interviews have a particular format which, by Bradshaw's own admission, was not followed. I'm a lawyer, she says. I do this for a living, so I understand the rules of PACE interviews. For instance, she says, in a PACE interview, the accused must be told that they are entitled to free and independent legal advice, whereas this was denied to the postmasters. And she says they were mostly interviewed alone, and where at least one had a union representative present, that representative was not permitted to speak or advise. Access to free and independent legal advice is a cornerstone of PACE, she says. A PACE interview is conducted under caution, and that's the famous you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you fail to mention now something which you would rely on in court. Anything you do say will be given in evidence. Okay, that's the formula the police are supposed to say. Emma explains the crucial importance of the word may in this complicated and sloppily defined statement. Here we have, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you fail to mention now, etc., etc. I cannot believe that the police would emphasise the may at that point, because may is not an absolute. It just means that the possibility is there, as in, I may go out tomorrow if I can borrow a coat to wear. No prizes for anyone who knows where that's from, but if you don't, I think if I remember, I'll put the answer in the description. Okay, so that's may. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand the implications of the word may. And even though PACE insists, a PACE protocol insists that it has to be absolutely clear to the accusers that the accused understood what all that means, very often they don't. Well, let's face it, a lot of criminals are, well, not the sharpest tool in the box, are they? Anyway, the upshot of this is, as Emma says, saying nothing on its own cannot be seen as an admission of guilt. And then she explains that the problems for the accused arise when the accused says one thing in a statement under interview and then another thing in court. For instance, if the accused says, well, I was watching TV at the time the crime happened, and then in court says, yeah, I was down the pub with my mates. Well, obviously, the court's going to think there's something a bit fishy about that. But for your information, according to Emma, silence cannot be interpreted as guilt, and it's worth remembering that if you're ever in court. Okay, Emma continues, a PACE interview must be recorded verbatim, either in tape or in writing. And then it must be sealed, either the tape or a copy of it must be sealed, either the tape or the document. And the reason for that is so that the accused can't say that the document or the record was tampered with when the trial comes up. And many of the postmasters claim that the copies their solicitors got were heavily edited and that there was no sealed copy. Things that the postmasters said that would have proven their innocence could have been taken out of the document. If they're not sealed, that could easily have happened. And they do say that the copies their solicitors got were heavily edited, which means that the solicitors themselves were blundering about in the dark, not having all the evidence. A PACE interview must be conducted. Now, this is the really important bit. A PACE interview must be conducted by someone completely unconnected with the prosecutor. In this case, the post office. Mr. Bradshaw admitted that he personally intervened and influenced the decisions of the people who had to decide whether or not to charge. For example, in one case, the decision maker didn't want to charge theft, and he persuaded her that she should. Let's think about that bonus again, should we? Percent. Yep. Nothing like a bonus to convince you that you've got to prosecute, is there? Next, a PACE interview is not supposed to have repeat questions. Whereas, Emma tells me, the interviewer was badgering the accused with repeated questions until the correct answer was produced. That's specifically forbidden by PACE. And then she adds, a PACE interview is to be conducted by someone who isn't in line for a bonus if there's a guilty plea. I'm interrupting to remind you to click like and to subscribe and share. Also, I'm constantly being told that YouTube removes subscriptions, so please click the notification bell and check that you really are subscribed. All the links to my other channels are in the description, including links to donation sites. I'm always grateful, of course, for donations, but simply clicking like is the best thing you can do for this video and my channel generally. Thank you. In these cases, she continues, the post office was accuser, investigator and decision maker and had a financial and reputational motive to skew the outcome of the cases. Mr. Bradshaw also admits that he signed a statement to the court saying that Horizon was robust and reliable, while he had good reason to believe, and that had good reason to believe is a legal term. And he definitely had a good reason to believe that Horizon was not robust and reliable. And even if he didn't know what was going wrong with Horizon, as an investigator, he would have seen dozens of cases of serious fraud cropping up, which had not cropped up before. And that should have been enough to give him good reason to believe there was something wrong going on there. Yeah, but he signed a statement saying he had no good reason to believe that these people weren't committing fraud. Now, that's perjury. It's also perverting the course of justice, I believe. He admits in his own evidence that he knew that statement was untrue, as he raised the issue with Cartwright King's solicitors, and they said, just sign it. So he said, yeah, well, that's what I did. I'm just following orders. Where have I heard that before? Okay, along with Emma. He goes on to say that the statement was put forward in evidence in dozens of cases, some of which he attended, and verified his statement as being true under oath. And then she says, knowing or having reason to believe that it was untrue is perverting the course of justice, and that carries a maximum life sentence. You'd think he'd be a little bit afraid of that, wouldn't you? But apparently he was so sure of the post office covering his tracks that he was prepared to do something that carries a maximum of a life sentence. That doesn't mean a life sentence would be imposed, but it would certainly be a serious sentence. And yet, this is Emma again, even after the case broke, after the 2021 case that exonerated the first 20 postmasters, and to this current day, Bradshaw, incredibly, is still working as a post office investigator. I asked Emma if I could read out what she'd said, and she said, absolutely. The fact that this man, a known perjurer, is still acting as an investigator means that the post office has still not put itself in order. I'd say that's a masterpiece of British understatement. The post office has still not put itself in order. I'd say it looks to me very much as if the post office is a criminal organisation that should be arrested. I mean, everybody in it, except for the poor buggers who have to go out there and post the letters, of course. I'm referring to the people who are posting the letters because whatever the weather is like, we get our post every morning. And except Sundays. I am very grateful for that. Very grateful indeed. But these are not people who have any power in a situation like this. Right, well, that is the breakdown of Bradshaw's role in the prosecution, persecution and destruction of a whole lot of very respectable people. And he's still working for the post office, and I assume still getting a good night's sleep. Okay, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.